Talk on another PolitiPod Live. Tonight we'll cover cruel and unusual punishment, civic duty, Cootie Giuliani, and a visit from Mars. We'll also have our segments Democrat establishment versus progressives and fascism creeps. I'm Tom Vickel.
I'm Hannah Soldner.
And I'm Matt Nisanoff. We'll start with cruel and unusual punishment. The first thing we'll talk about tonight is that there's been a judge looking at the shooter who was at the Washington, or I should say, who was almost near the Washington Correspondents' Dinner. And apparently, for some reason, he's saying that the actions against Cole Allen have been legally deficient. And so something's going on there where he's not actually being taken through the regular process in the way you might expect if someone were to take shots at government officials or just a room full of hundreds of people. That should be enough right there. But whatever is happening, there seems to be something going on that's they're not giving this guy their full attention, and apparently there was a thing about his being on suicide watch, and that is not that's being challenged as being true as well, and that in fact he shows no suicidal tendencies whatsoever. So where does his rights to have a speedy trial enter, and what would be the basis for them to ignore this guy when this event was right on live television, right there on, I guess it was C-SPAN, that covered it. And so what's the deal? What do you guys think the deal is?
Well, I was struck that the judge himself is a judge, I guess, who, as I read, presided over a lot of the January 6th trials. Unsurprisingly, I guess they're in Washington. But and he said that the January 6th defendants were treated better than this guy's being treated. So I thought that was noteworthy. What is the deal? I don't know the specifics of what which conditions were too harsh. So it's hard for me to wrap my head around it and get an angle on it.
Well,
Go ahead.
No, please, Hannah, go right ahead.
I was going to say, if the judge thinks it's harsh, that's probably pretty harsh. And, I'm kind of a softie when it comes to any of this stuff, or as I would say, correct. I think that a lot of times we are in it for the punitive nature, for the bloodshed, for the being mean to people, and yeah, and so I think that but it wouldn't surprise me that they would put, I'm sure if you're on suicide watch, there's even less privacy. Maybe they're in solitary confinement for safety or things like that. I don't especially know the details of that either, but I feel like, you can put a bunch of, you can give somebody a bunch of sort of word of mouth reputations of being dangerous, suicidal, whatever, and use that as ways to tack on an even more miserable time while they're there.
Yeah, it says here he was in a padded cell under near constant lockdown, denied phone access, court documents, and even religious materials.
Yeah, so I think that this is part of a story, a narrative that the prosecutors and possibly even journalists want to pursue on this person, and that it helps build the narrative that there's something going on, that there is a real attempt to attack the president or attack somebody who was at the dinner. And I think that personally, I'm one of the people who thinks that this is just another one of those sort of setups like Butler, where it's, take the incident in Butler where allegedly he was not only shot at, but that he was wounded. I mean, his ear was grazed by one of the bullets, and you saw nothing but ear patches on his head, and then all the Republicans picked it up as a show of solidarity to wear tampons on their ears, and were walking around like that. And so I think that there's a lot of merit, a lot of interest in the idea that these are not really incidents of wild people who are on the lone assassin who's attempting to do this heinous act, as much as there's real questions about what's going on, where they're coming from, why this is happening. In Butler, they say it was a kid who scrambled onto the top of a nearby building that was in direct line of sight of the stage.
Right.
Well, the Secret Service and a whole lot of people are paid to specifically look out for things just like that. Where is it? Where's a possible attack going to be coming from? What is it that we can do to safeguard our public officials? And they put a lot of time and money and study and all that kind of thing. So when people were
Well, and
telling,
not just that, but I'm sure it was reported that people reported that they saw somebody climbing onto the roof with a rifle. Maybe you should look into that. It's not that just that he did it, but that it was actually that he was immediately snitched out, and they still apparently got up there and could fire off several rounds.
so right, so how does that happen? I mean, are these law enforcement? So what you're saying is actually absolutely true. People in the crowd
Yes.
saying, "Hey, that guy is getting into a position that is not, that is a line of sight, direct, high in the air, direct line of sight. Is that something you should be
Yeah,
looking at?" And
doesn't
gosh,
have a
for some
camera.
reason they didn't. And isn't that weird? And so it is. Just like with this case, here's this guy who apparently walks in with several weapons, not just one, but carrying several weapons. The video shows a guard, a security person with a dog that literally follow him into a hallway.
Right.
Turns out was the hallway that earlier in the day had been used for the red carpet. So literally, that's so he walks down into that hallway for about 10-15 seconds. The
Sure.
guy with the dog follows him for a second, and then he pulls the dog away. Well, why would he not listen to what the dog is telling him?
Right. It's the whole
If
point of
the
having the
dog is
dog.
sending him signals, yeah, what's going on there? How could that? And then the fact that, as I said earlier, they were on a completely different floor. There were gunshots. Was anybody in that room, in particular, jeopardy?
Well, I'd like to.
Not really.
You bring up an interesting point, and I'd like to revisit it. When a person's looking at these, and we're wondering if a person is wondering whether this is like a put up job, some sort of a false flag operation, or somehow a inside job, or is it a valid, just what it seems, a valid homicide attempt, assassination attempt. Which is it? And you look at these things and you look for things that are out of pocket. You look at things that are unusual. Like you said, fervently ignoring a dog hitting a bomb dog or whatever that dog was hitting on. Did you say I saw that video and I thought it was someone else the dog hit on? Was it the suspect?
It was it was, yeah,
Okay,
because it shows him going in, shows the dog go in, the guy pull the dog away, and then the guy comes running out and
Right.
running into one of the detectors and running through, and that's when all the others jump on their withdraw their weapons.
Yeah, and so you look for these things that are out of the ordinary and unlikely, and like, I don't know, letting the president pop his head back up when there's an active shooter firing at him and he's already bleeding, letting him pop up and pump his fist a few times for the cameras when it would be the heretofore first time he's ever shown courage in his life. It makes you, it seems like an outlier, and maybe it makes you think it's something stinks here in Beantown. And so you see something with again with this contemporary version, and now he's in jail and he's being treated strangely, or maybe something's out of whack in jail. What happens if they find him dead next week? Is this a precursor, or is it just one of those things that happens and it's a coincidence? It's what a person has to consider when they wonder about these things. And this administration, the person at the top, everybody throughout, none of them are above something like this. It's just a matter of whether they would try it, not whether they're too good for it. They're not.
Right, exactly. And if that person were if Cole Allen were found dead in his cell tomorrow, I'm sure they'd find a note. That's happened before too. But I mean, there are legitimate questions with Butler. How did that happen? How did the blood spatter go the wrong direction? How is it that the cameramen were allowed to come in at the last minute to take the picture at just the right angle? How was a guy who had a gun allowed to get into position in a place that's rather set? How did Cole Allen get into the building? How did he get through the check-in? How did he?
That's another thing I wanted to touch on. If you'll be so kind as
Sure.
to allow me this vague disrespect in your direction. So you have to look at these things and you wonder, is this guy some sort of super ninja, or is the Secret Service just incompetent? Well, I'd like to point out that just before late breaking news, that a Secret Service officer was accused of masturbating naked in a Miami hotel hallway after following a guest to her room. And so, the Secret Service might not be always at their best. And this is one of those. Had you heard about our Secret Service run-in? The new Florida man story? Had you heard about that?
No, I'm sad to know it now.
Yeah, what's going on?
It's fresh, but it's not that fresh. It was this is published on May 5th, so it was a good day ago. Anyway, yeah.
I think.
Sorry.
No, one of the things about this is the Correspondents' Dinner was at the Hilton Hotel. This isn't even the first time somebody's tried to assassinate a president there. That's where Reagan got shot in 1981. So it's not even necessarily so surprising for me. And I mean, also there's so much violence that happens in our country. What I think might be more, especially because I also have trouble believing that the Trump administration could pull off something so smart, but I could see somebody who is interested in watching the world burn down reach out to this person online and be like, hey, if you did this, wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't you become famous? Wouldn't this happen to you? Whatever. I feel like I could see somebody actually, even if it's not so intentional, there's been already the idea of somebody doing this to Trump has just kind of been in the miasma for a while now. I feel like it encourages people who might be on the fence to be like, oh, you're right. Maybe I've never tried to shoot before, but it's so popular popular is not a great word. It's so common in our country,
Yeah, I mean, you look at it and you start to consider these things. What was I gonna? I had another point, and it's just evaporated into the ether. But anyway, please continue.
Well, I would point out that Hannah, I disagree with the idea that it would take great intellect. This is not rocket scientry. This is give a guy a gun and say, look, take a shot, or here, take a rifle and see if you can see what you can do. So none of it is particularly much of a strain on the intellect. This is very basic stuff.
As much as I think for me, the thing that is difficult for me about this sort of situation is how many people do you have to swear to secrecy for the rest of their lives to get something like this happening.
I don't
Well,
know
and
that
I'd
you
like
need to swear anyone to secrecy. I mean, the whole point is that it's public.
I'd
But
like
I
to
mean,
point
like,
out. Sorry,
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I just mean, like, or if you're talking about Butler, said like the camera people got there in time. Like, in theory, somebody would have to know to tell the camera people to get there, and the camera
There
people would have
was.
to be lit in. And so, like, all those people have to then hold their mouth shut forever.
But that's the point. They not only did they not, but they are known. Somebody was responsible for that, and somebody on the staff was responsible for it. And that's where this whole question comes from. They're like, why did this woman tell these photographers to move from where they were in their section to just under where the stage was? Somebody did give the okay, and somebody did escort them over there so that they would be at just the position to happen to take the picture at the time that this random event sort of generally happened. So that is why there are questions, and it's not a secret. So, I mean, I think that there's yeah, I think you're trying to look at it as sort of somehow a grand conspiracy where it doesn't have to be, and especially when they're not going to be able to do what they're not actually doing this. It's not a matter of actually threatening anyone's life. It's a matter of doing something that is a distraction, doing something that can be said to be a particular action of violence, but that isn't. He was never in danger. He was never in the line of, no public official was in the line of sight. And frankly, neither were the journalists who have a problem with, who don't see eye to eye with Trump. And in fact, that's why Trump doesn't like them, because they don't toe the line. But now all of a sudden they have this in common. They were somehow threatened too. And so now they're kind of like, oh, well, Trump, we can understand what he's going through because we were attacked at the same time. So that's kind of an interesting outcome. Um, so, I mean, there's all I'm saying is that the things you're mentioning and the things that Jeff Newton has mentioned, saying that it must be true, and you really have to take into account that these are not crisis actors who are performing an act. This is something that really happened and genuinely should be acknowledged that way. I disagree with him, but I don't. He certainly has the right to say it, but I certainly disagree, and I think that it's frankly, it 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 begs it begs to be differed with. It's too simplistic to say, oh yeah, it is everything that it seems to be. I don't know. Garfield's assassin was able to walk up to him in a hotel lobby. Um, you know, you mentioned Reagan's assassin, Hinckley. He was standing right there outside the Hilton. He didn't shoot at reporters. He didn't shoot in the opposite direction. Didn't shoot on a different floor. He was sitting there waiting for Reagan. And when Reagan got in the line of sight, that's when he fired. So people who really want to assassinate someone go after the individual that they want to assassinate. They don't shoot up empty hallways, two floor or two down. But we definitely need to talk about this more because obviously it's an interesting issue. And
I would like to talk about it more.
Please go ahead for a little bit more, but then we're going to have to
Sure.
move on.
I understand. Well, I'd like to point out that it is a right-wing Russian thing to do to stage an assassination attempt. The Washington Post on March 21st, about 3 weeks ago, reported that to tilt the Hungarian election that Viktor Orban just lost, I mean, Russians Foreign Intelligence Service proposed staging an assassination attempt on Viktor Orban in order to improve his showing. And so, I don't want to break anybody's innocence here, but I'm pretty sure our president has a pretty strong pipeline to Russia, and if they were feeding that type of an idea to Orban, they're definitely feeding it to the Great Pumpkin over there in Washington, and I wouldn't put it past him at all. He's got connections in he's been in show business. He's got connections with World Wrestling Federation, UFC. It would be the easiest thing in the world for them to palm a blood capsule or something, tape it behind his ear. Who knows? Whatever. And on top of all this other stuff, it I would be remiss if I didn't point out that it's a thing. It's a thing, and it's a thing of the people he rubs shoulders with and does favors for. You can't ignore it.
I'm going to propose actually one thing so that we can move on. What I'm going to propose is that we take an episode and just talk about this because clearly we could talk for an entire episode. So would you be willing to do that? Would you guys be willing to just commit one
Sure,
issue
I think
to
so.
one issue for one episode, and we'll go
Absolutely.
into
We just nerd out on it.
Cool.
fair enough, Hannah, or
Yeah. That works for me.
great. Well, that's what we'll do.
Coming
Tune
soon.
in. Yeah, exactly. So tune in on a Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and you will get a entire episode on what could happen, what may have happened, what did happen. We'll hash it out more. I do before we leave this topic. I do want to mention the bee lady and what happened with. There was a sheriff's department that wanted to evict an 83-year-old man who was going through cancer treatments, but no, the landlord wanted him evicted, and the sheriff's department went over to do it. And he had a friend who is a beekeeper, and she decided that she would act, and so that she would, she had something to do with this. And what her part was, and as you see in this wonderful picture, she hooked up to the back of her vehicle several beehives. You can see them just off there to the back, and literally brought them over to where the eviction was taking place. She, I believe, opened them and then even knocked them over so that it made the inhabitants upset, made certain that they were properly riled up, and apparently several of the sheriff's department members said to her that they were allergic to bees, which may or may not be true. I would think that if they wanted to de-escalate at that point, perhaps leaving would have been a good idea. It's not like they couldn't do an eviction on another day, but apparently they felt that they had to do it that minute, and that
American cops, they don't leave. They don't leave. It's they dominate you, and that's how they do it. That's always
they,
been my experience in person and on television. They don't back off. They make you back off, and if they have to hurt you to do it, they'll do it.
they have to throw somebody on the ground. Somebody's got to be thrown down, and this time they did it to the woman in the beekeeper suit who had released the bees. Um, so, do you sort of a reverse sting operation performed on the sheriff department members? So, what do you guys think?
I can't top that. Hannah, what about you?
I'll try and be a little short and sweet about this because I feel like it could go the way of the last section, but I just feel like I don't know. There had to be some way other than evicting this guy. And like I don't know that much about the history, so I don't know if his like medical debt from cancer treatment wiped him out or whatever, but I just feel like there just had to be it's interesting to be on the side of the person who is like letting bees out on people, but I'm just like, man, who are you to like? I feel like when you were like, some of them might have been allergic to bees and stuff, and I just was like, they should be allergic to kicking old people out of their house who are dying. Like, in what way is this protecting and serving anything? Except a landowner, I guess.
They got to turn over that house, baby. They got to make that rent. Somebody's profit's going to waste.
That's true.
So I would like to say, that I can't say enough about this wonderful lady. I admire her moxie, the cut of her jib, her passion, her gravitas. Uh, she is, has the potential to be a bit of a modern day Robin Hood. I want to write a Celtic song, mandolin in there somewhere in her honor. I think it's fantastic. Um, and I'm ready to create some mythos around this, and really make something of it. I love it. She's sticking up for the little guy who can't stick up for himself. She's bringing the wrath of nature itself, and it's a classic story of the little guy fighting against the powers that be. More power to her. I hope. I hope she's. Oh, and look at this mug. Look at this. Look at the face of regret here. How about that?
And that's the mugshot, right?
That is no F's given right there. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is. I don't know about you, but I feel it's like moist in here now. I feel a little warm. This is. I admire. I admire it. So I think I can stop gushing now. That's probably enough. But
Yeah.
good for her. Good for this modern day Robin Hood.
There you go. You're a true believer.
I'm with it.
I think that okay. So let's move on. I'm glad that we got a chance to mention it, and we should be moving on to our first segment, and that is the Democratic establishment versus progressives. This is something that's been going on for, oh, actually quite a long time, a number of decades, and it has been taking a more and more virulent form. The Clinton versus Sanders campaign was one example where things became very um, maybe got off the rails, you might say, where the Clinton campaign conspired with the DNC against Sanders, which is certainly not their place and not the way to do it. But it is the kind of thing you do when you're desperate and you see that you're going to lose, and you're going to do everything you can to pull the stops to make something happen. Now, the most recent version of these sort of differences have been playing out in New York. There was a special election for a city council seat, the third district, and the progressives put up Lindsey Boyland to challenge Carl Wilson. Those are the names of the people involved, but it's the same dynamic. It's Wilson for the establishment, and Boylan was the progressive who was going to come in and be able to, because of the being from the progressive side, would sweep the votes and make something happen. And it did not happen that way. She did get a chance to run. She was not interfered with that we know of at this time. But the results were, even in a ranked choice vote where there are rounds where you count the vote and then recount as some people might be, as the lowest person is withdrawn from the contest and their votes can be redistributed if voters ranked more than one person on their ballot. We rank them 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, and you can leave someone off, however you want to do it. If you do rank it, then those as the earlier choices are eliminated, then your vote is redistributed, so it's not wasted, and they can wind up picking somebody from one election as opposed to going into having a runoff 6 months later, etc. In this case, Wilson and Boylan held their about 20 percentage points difference from the first round through the fourth round of vote counting. So it was pretty, it was clear. Wilson won, and with 40% over 20%. And as the others dropped off, that percentage basically stayed the same through all four rounds. So the progressives were not able to move the voters, which is the bottom line in this. The bottom line with elections is who shows up on the day of the election and who votes for who, and that's what matters. And We've got a similar dynamic with David Hogg, who's a well-known. People know him from when he was in the shooting that took place down in the school shooting down in Florida, which is where he originally was started to turn himself towards political action. And he's pursued that and made his own group and uh, made it a national effort and pursues more progressive agenda. In fact, he was on the DNC, brought up to the national level of the Democratic Party, and then lost the seat because the establishment people who were in higher places in the DNC said, you know, you got to support the people that we're recruiting. Our job is to
Who we tell
recruit
you
people
to
to run,
support.
and
Yeah.
exactly, and you're trying to find people to run against them, progressives to run against the establishment. So therefore, you can't give you a seat here. We got to withdraw your seat because you're doing the opposite of what we are trying to do. And he did leave, and he's gone on with his own group to continue to pursue the goal of getting younger people involved and younger people elected. And that means progressives in his case. And I believe he was one of those who was behind Boylan and promoting her and getting her onto the ballot. And we see that even on the local level in New York, where whereas the DNC is the national version of the Democratic Party, there's a local version called the county committees. And there are progressives or reform minded people who are trying to get seats on the local party's county committee. And they may wind up going the same way as Lindsey Boyle this cycle. The vote is for the seats for the county committee is June 23rd, which is the primary in New York. And it's been sold up to this point as, hey, Zoran Mondani did an amazing thing in the primary last year. And he turned the tables and made things completely different. And because of his being able to win, maybe there's an opportunity, a path that we can follow to do the same thing he did. But I don't think that that's actually been followed. And I think so. I think that the results in this June are going to show that they didn't follow his example. They didn't follow the things he did to break that cycle, and the progressive side will pay for that in lost seats. There is the California race, of course, California governor's race, and it's kind of a I don't know how to put that into the terms of establishment versus progressive because the lead Democrat, who's sort of kind of become clear, is Tom Steyer, who is an actual billionaire. He's a billionaire. He's run for office before. He ran for president, and with Steve Hilton, a Republican, sort of coming to appear to be on the top of the primary of dozens of people, the Democrats have sort of started looking at Steyer and saying, "Yeah, well, actually, he's somebody that we can support, and here's somebody who can actually challenge a Republican who looks like he might has a chance to win." But what do you guys think about Steyer? What do you think about his policies? What have you heard?
Well, I've heard from my progressive friends online that they seem to be excited about Steyer. They seem to think he means what he says. They're not excited he's a billionaire, but who isn't a billionaire these days? So, but they liked his stance on Israel, and they like his stance on the environment, and a number of other things. So that's what I'm hearing. That's what's prominent in my social loop.
And heard that he has said things like, "Hey, I'm a billionaire, but I think billionaires need to be taxed, and I'm willing to pay more taxes, and I'm willing to impose taxes on other billionaires, which is why they don't like me, which is why they're spending against me in the race." And there's not been any other Democratic candidate who's sort of captured the imagination of the progressives like Tom Steyer has, even being endorsed by Bernie Sanders.
Hashtag not all billionaires.
Yeah, right. Not all billionaires. Hannah, what do you think?
I think that uh, I have two different thoughts. So my thought broadly, I mean, I think I agree with you with this sort of like stymieing of progressive voices broadly, sort of countrywide. And one of the things that's kind of interesting to think about with Sanders um, is obviously the world has changed a lot since the 2016 election, but I think that, or I would like to think that, at least in the first election, a lot of people who voted for Trump just would have voted for any kind of outsider. And so I feel like, some of them might have voted for Bernie because he's also an outsider, even though, he's been a congressperson forever, a senator forever. But yeah, they just wanted some change. Now, I don't cancel me or come after me. I understand that a lot of people voted because of racism and they continue to vote because of racism. Um, but no, and I mean, I think that one of the things that's been interesting to me, especially in light of how the Democratic Party has been moving for the past, well, a long time, but I feel like especially the last like 3 years or so, is just like where like one of the things about Mamdani in his election is he just had ideas. He wasn't like, "Hey, vote for me because I have a D next to my name." He was like, "This is what I'm going to do." Um,
I'd also like to
it's
point. Sorry, go ahead.
no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to point out that also Bernie Sanders has endorsed Tom Steyer, so that's got to buy some people some credit.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that what can be nice to hear is um, billionaires obviously deserve to be taxed a lot more and stuff, but there's also a lot of like weird um, laws kind of protecting them. Like I remember, I think that Mackenzie, I don't remember her last name anymore, but formerly Bezos, when she got a bunch of when she got her deserved money in her divorce and she tried to give away a bunch of it, she just couldn't because there's only so much stock you can sell before they put a hold on it so it doesn't tank the company, and then there's only so much whatever. So like in some ways they literally can't give it away. um, and I feel like something that could really help is somebody who's in that system who's being like, look at how broken it is. you know I think that there's one of the back in the days of like the classic robber baron era, one of the robber barons thought, this is a crazy thing to think, but he thought most of them were sort of greedy for money the way we think of current billionaires, but he used to think, hey, nobody should have more than $10 million, and this was in the 1800s. So um, that would still be a good number now. But I mean, I think that there has to be some sort of awareness, especially because a lot of it is racism, but people at least claim that they voted for Trump because he knew stuff. And this guy, that same argument could be made, right? Um, he had done some terrible things, and now he's doing investment banking and whatever. But he does know the system, so for whatever that claim is worth, it is nice to have somebody be like, no, like I'm telling you, I'm on the inside, and it's really bullshit. Um, So I think that there is something to that about somebody who can tell you like firsthand, like, you know, no, like everybody is, lying and the emperor has no clothes. So
I will say, and it's her name is Mackenzie Scott,
Scott.
the former Mrs. Bezos, who got 30, I think it was 36 million in the divorce, then gave away 26 million, but currently is actually worth 42 million,
Yeah.
because she gave a bunch of money away, but she's also really smart and she's also very capable, and she's been able to create her own wealth once she had some to actually to work with,
Well,
which
even I am not a billionaire or a millionaire, but I have been a thousandaire a couple times.
ah,
And there was a time when I got a bunch of stock from a company, and I went to go sell it all, and they were like, "You can't. It's too high of a percentage of stock for one person to sell." So they literally like put a freeze on it. Um, and it's not like I owned, you know, some massive percentage of the company, um, or I was cashing out, millions of dollars. Um, So, like I think that there are like automatic stops like by US law to keep you from, that's why you couldn't just like, Jeff Bezos or whatever couldn't just like liquidate $1 billion in stock, because they would be like, because it's I guess it's kind of a good rule as much as there are good rules in the stock market. But if you sell a bunch, then everybody's going to be like, oh my god, the guy who owns all this is selling a bunch, I'm going to sell a bunch, and then it crashes. um so Also, my apologies to Mackenzie Scott. It is not hard to remember the last name Scott.
Well, you can only do it once you know it. So now you know, and you can do it henceforth. Um, okay. Well, I tell you what. Let's move on to our next issue, and that is civic duty. And there you go. Do your civic duty, as they say. And this is also, you mentioned there's certain rules that you can follow, and in voting we have rules, but those rules can change, and that happens through legislation. And there's some voter rights changes to the voter rights bill that have come up and are obviously not advances. Those are very much Republican ideas that uh, have been worked to remove rights as opposed to support rights. Hannah, what do you think about the voter rights bill and what's going on?
So, I mean, we talked about this, I think, last week. We just sort of briefly dug into it, but the Supreme Court in a decision last week came down and said that there's a blocking on racial gerrymandering, right? So you can't and it came out of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, just out of the Civil Rights Act. Um, the idea is that um, you can't create voting districts specifically to lock out people on the basis of race. However, what you can do is, if people who are of a specific race are more likely to vote some way, you can lock them out of voting politically. Um, so you can say, which is ironic, because I feel like if you have some history uh, keeping people from voting, they might vote against you for fear of that you did that again. And so you could be like, well, nothing against you, but you're my, opponent, and so we're going to just basically dilute all your voting power. And the Supreme Court, in this decision, they said that people who are not white, have some more of them are voting more conservatively than ever, which is true. Um, and they're also saying that there's less racial injustice in the South, which is, definitely, if true, only exists because of laws like this. Basically, if you are eliminating the law that prevents you from writing racist districts, then racist districts will be more likely to be made. Um, and to sort of prove this point immediately, uh, I think that Louisiana stopped their elections, stopped 2 days before early voting had started. Sort of mail-in ballots for like military or people out of the country had already gone out, and several other states have stopped their elections or have threatened to invalidate their elections. Um, Donald Trump has explicitly said that if things are written right, they can give 40 more votes to the Republicans in the House with doing nothing else. Um, and so, yeah, basically there was just like an immediate overturn. Like the fall, people didn't even wait to pretend that this was whatever. Just immediately they all switched it, because in a certain sense, the law said you can you can redraw your districts to make sure they favor your party, and so now they're all going to do that.
Yep, absolutely a part of the whole mid redistricting nonsense. And the Republicans have been following that for a couple of years now, where they redraw the boundaries to create political advantages as opposed to communities, or putting communities together, or putting people in particular. If the district they're drawing happens to cut a town in half, so be it. I mean, there's a political advantage in having this town not vote together. and that kind of thing. So, and they've been pursuing that for a couple of years on that argument of, well, we're only doing it for the political advantage. And the Supreme Court's going, yeah, sure, right, that makes sense, which is sort of bizarre, to say the least. Tom, anything about the voting rights bill?
Yes. Unrestrained rage. I'm so sick of districting and redistricting and gerrymandering and politicians choosing their voters instead of voters choosing their politicians. If we have the knowledge and the technology to abuse and distort and twist districts to fit one party or another or one demographic or another, then we have the knowledge and we have the technology not to. We should be beyond all this slippery soap bullshit, where politicians just divide things up finer and finer for themselves, and they're only getting more brazen. We're not waiting for the census anymore. We're just ramming stuff through in states where we have control, and then we fight not to let it happen in states we don't control, where the same rubric will actually cause us trouble. It's crap, and we tolerate it too much. The people should be more active in their government and stamp this out like the little plague that it is. We have algorithms and maps and satellites and all kinds of fancy stuff, and we can divide these states into districts that resemble something fair, something neutral, nonpartisan, bipartisan, tripartisan, whatever. It can be done. It is within our power. We're not doing it just so we can one side can screw the other more or again or whatever. And I'm fed up with it. When it comes to redistricting, when it comes to money in politics, when it comes to foreign interference, we know these things are happening. I'm over the shenanigans. I'm over. It's not funny anymore. I don't like it when anybody does it, and the people who do it are they're more shameless about it, more calculating and cynical about it, and the side that I'm on masquerades as a nobler, be the bigger person. But we're not. I think we're just bad at it. I don't think we're better people. I think we're just worse criminals and corrupt politicians. And I don't know if that's something to be proud of or not, but it can be done that districts are picked fairly, and it should be required by law. There should be a commission, a magic 8 ball, something that would just pick these districts and let there be competitive. Because when there's not competition, entire states are in the pocket of one party ad infinitum, here until the horizon, and that's not how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be a challenge of ideas and a good plan, and we're not getting that. We're getting the opposite of that, and we're getting screwed for it. We're getting sold out to the highest bidder, and I'm over it. And that's what I think we should do. I think it's well within our power to adopt fair policies, lock them into legislation, and that's it. Law and legislation, and have a competitive race again, where someone wins. The people at least have a fighting chance to be represented by politicians who live in fear for their jobs. We've lost that, and look where it's brought us.
There you go. There are states that are voting on that, I think, but of course, as you point out, the Republicans in control, they're not going to let that happen easily. They're not going to. They're going to try to
They can't
block it.
keep their
It is
schlongs out of it. They just can't do it.
ballots and whatnot. But yeah, absolutely. I know Ohio has one that they've been fighting for a couple of years now. A nonpartisan commission that would draw the maps and that kind of thing. Okay, we are going to move on and move on to our other segment for the evening, which is fascism creeps. Ironically, following the redistricting discussion, we walk right into fascism. And there is, of course, I'm sure at this point everybody's heard that there's an abortion bill that is available or has been available that can be mailed, and that the Supreme Court has said that is not okay. That they have banned the pill from being sent by mail. I believe there's something going on with that case where they want to, or that it may, perhaps it's not finalized. Is that it? Because there's some talk about that it's not going to be banned or that it hasn't been banned yet, or I'm not entirely clear. But let's anything on the abortion pill before we move on to some backlash for Trump.
Nothing to add.
Yeah, I mean, it's taking away. Not that I believe in any sort of. Not that I believe that people are capable of intellectual consistency, but it's definitely taking away states' rights to have something like that.
There you go. All right, we'll move on to Trump and possibly X. Apparently, there's a backlash that's occurring, and in the form of Canada and Europeans meeting to look at how they can work out some power structure for. I guess they're calling it the middle powers. Canada is the one of the leading countries in this collection of nations that are saying, look, the power dynamic in the world since World War II has been one way, but Trump's dismantled it. It's not going to go back. It's certainly not going to go back easily. We have to think of ourselves as a set of middle powers who will make decisions between ourselves for what our best interest is, because America will no longer look towards our best interests as part of their best interests. So things are going to change, and Carney, Prime Minister Carney up in Canada, has been the leading voice and has said this repeatedly. What do you think about the middle powers?
I'm appalled. I'm mad about everything this week. We have forsaken our allies and our coalitions, the soft power that greatly increased our overall power. We've thrown it away with all the forethought and all the planning that we put into the Iran war, which is to say zero. We've thrown it all away. For what? For nothing. Canada and Europe, every country in Europe just spinning, trying to not to land on their ass, trying to figure out what to do, because we just decided to throw it all away for nothing. For what? For Putin? So Putin will take our calls and tell us we're a good boy? I don't understand. I don't understand how we got here. I don't understand how we stay here. I don't understand why Congress has to be so completely useless to stop this when they could do it in a day. It is maddening. We're flushing a lot of this country's future and current value down the toilet again for nothing. I don't understand. And I'm still unhappy about it. I'm still getting over it.
I picked up on that. Yeah,
I know it's subtle.
Exactly. And it makes a lot of sense. Things that it hasn't been, but it hasn't been by mistake that we have been building these alliances, and that we've been the superpower, so we've been able to have our way. And for some reason, the current administration has decided to just stop all these alliances and says that we're getting taken advantage of. Well, I don't know. Well, it's not so much we're getting taken advantage of. It's we're doing things because we're the power and we're the ones who can make it happen.
We have had things our way for so long we don't know any different. Entire lifetimes have gone by. Now we're going to pull troops out of Germany. That's how we project our power. That's how we react to things quickly. It's how we save people who need saving, including our own troops. You know, having a base in Germany or somewhere to go in Germany, that's where our wounded are going right now from Iran. And we're just going to pull up stakes, sayonara, auf Wiedersehen, as the case may be. It doesn't make any sense except to weaken this country. That's the sense it makes. We have cultivated these coalitions and allies for very good reason, like you said. And I don't know, we're just hacking off entire portions of our national anatomy, and it's gobsmacking, and we will regret it, and soon, and for a very long time. I hate to say, but it's true. You can't unflip that switch.
Yeah, I agree. It's when it does hit, everybody will say, "What happened?" And it will be,
A third
"You
of this
made this,
country,
or
I
you
guarantee
helped it."
you it. A third
You
of this
got it
country
along.
is going to wake up, and if ever, they probably won't wake up. But a third of this country, I think, is just completely blissfully unaware that this is happening, that it could even potentially have any effect. Uh, I thought gas prices, raising by 25% or more would rouse people. It doesn't. There's nothing. We're absolutely numb. We will sleep until through the fire that burns us all.
Yeah, it's interesting because I like everything you said, both of you said, I totally sign off on all that stuff. And there's like not to the point of this middle powers thing or whatever. There's not like another superpower or burgeoning superpower or quasi superpower out there that I think should be in charge instead. Like people are like, oh, it's going to be China next, or like Russia's clearly trying to, claw back or whatever. But I think that the idea of people working together is so much stronger. I mean, like, think about, you know, apart from just how stupid the war in Iran is, one of the things it's teaching us is how much better things flow if we can work together as a whole group of countries to do things, or like look at where the UK has gone post Brexit, like all this stuff of just like cutting everybody out. Like this is not we don't live in a world where people are islands anymore, like it works so much better to work together to get the best of all things for all people. Um, and I just feel like any kind of isolationism or whatever is ridiculous. Now we can have a discussion about like, should we start manufacturing hammers in the US again instead of like buying them from somewhere else? Sure, we can talk about that. But like this whole like, I don't know, it's like it's going to a world that just doesn't exist anymore. And you can see the way that it's all going very poorly.
Well, and while we have you commenting, would you care to say anything about the New York Times getting a hold of the SCOTUS shadow docket memos?
Yeah, so I know we're running a little bit long, so I'll try and be close on this. But a couple of weeks ago, I just didn't know about it, and we didn't know about it until now. The shadow docket, which is the way that the Supreme Court can. It's actually called I don't know if it's called the emergency docket, but it's sort of before it was known as the shadow docket. It was the emergency docket, and it's a way that the Supreme Court can issue um, decisions sort of on a rapid pace. So they don't have to, there doesn't have to be like, open arguments and then, a decision that comes down and then like the whatever and the dissent and whatever. It's basically the Supreme Court just saying like, this is our decision. You don't know if it's 9-0, if it's 5-4, if it's whatever. But it was, and originally what it was used a lot for was things like death penalty, right? Like this person is going to get executed in 2 weeks and the Supreme Court doesn't have time to, you know, fit it into their docket next year, or an election, like, hey, there's going to be, Trump Gore or whatever. There's going to be some big election and we're not going to wait a year for the results to come. So the Supreme Court is just going to meet up and say, hey, this is what it is. But they've been using it more and more and more. And the thing about the shadow docket, one of the reasons it has that name is because you just don't know anything about it. You don't necessarily know, how the judges reach their decision, justices reach their decision. What was did people disagree? Who thought what? Whatever. Nobody has to sign anything. And more, these shadow docket rulings have been coming out, especially during Trump 2. And the first sort of what's considered the first modern use of the shadow docket happened in 2016. It's kind of hard to tell because there wasn't like a specific time, but it was sort of what a lot of people consider to be the modern use of something. And the New York Times got a hold of the memos of the justices talking. And what it turned out that original thing, the reason it was some sort of like, I don't know if it was some sort of like environmental issue or something, and they just like kiboshed it. And they were like, look, we're just gonna decide on this. We could kick it down to a lower court, but this is how we think the lower court is going to vote, and this is how we think if we met with people we would vote, and so we've just decided this is what it is. And one of the things that came out is that their reasoning was trash. And one of the reasons, I think the Chief Justice, I think his reason was a similar thing had happened like a year before, a couple of years before, and the Supreme Court was going to strike it down. It was going to be environmental regulations. The Supreme Court was going to strike it down, but so many companies had already updated to fit with the new environmental recommendations that it didn't matter if it was struck down. And so he thought that it was unfair that their voice wasn't heard because the people just made it better anyway without hearing the Supreme Court. So he's like, we're just going to act on this before anybody else can do anything. So it seemed that, I think it was Kennedy, was just upset that like he didn't get a say. And so he acted very strongly on this thing and just said, this is what I think the lower court would have said anyway. And so this is what we're going to do, even though there was no evidence of that. And also the shadow docket is said to be something that is done, like I said, in an emergency basis, but the lower court was already rethinking how they were going to decide. And they'd already told the companies, if we rule against you, we'll give you 2 to 5 years to update everything. So it's not like it was going to affect anybody's, they'd have had years to fight back or adopt or whatever. But that sort of led to where we are now. Anyway, somebody leaked it to the New York Times, and there's a whole thing about it, and check it out.
There you go. I'm going to mention one or two other issues kind of quick. But Tom, if you have anything that you'd like to say, please feel free to chip in. We're going to go long tonight. That's just the way it's going to be. Be prepared, snuggle up, get a second drink or a blanket or whatever it is you need, because we're going to go a little bit long. The two other issues I did want to make certain that we mentioned in this fascism creep section is that Carlos Ivan Mendoza Hernandez is a name you might have heard. You may recall he's the gentleman in California that ICE caught up with and shot several times. He had to be hospitalized. And then, to add insult to injury, they decided that they would arrest him and charge him with attempting to murder the ICE agents who shot him several times. This is the old playbook. We've seen it. We've literally presented it here in a previous issue, in a previous episode, where there's a booklet from Border Patrol that talks about how agents should talk about how they were almost run over, that there was a threat of the car running over them, and therefore it justifies the use of weapons and being able to shoot people. And this is a classic example of that. They said that they shot him, then they arrested him and took him to court, saying that he had attacked them with his car. There is video. It shows him reversing and then making a U-turn over a median, making a U-turn to go the opposite direction of them, and that they clearly were not in the way and were not where he was driving, that he was trying to run away for his life, and was still shot. And they took him to court. But there is, we'll see what the judge decides in that case, but it looks like the evidence is going to clearly provide some relief for Mr. Mendoza Hernandez. And of course, he's brown skinned, so of course they can't. The ICE says, "Oh well, he must be a gang member," and all this other accusations that they always come up with to try to justify their actions afterwards, and none of them are true. It's another set of lies, but that they can do that. They can say anything they want to. They can accuse anyone of being a gang member or trying to attack them if it can justify their using their weapons. The other story of very quickly is Perot, Jeanette Perot has given up on her prosecution of Jeremy Powell, the head of the Fed. The judge dropped the charges that were levied against Mr. Powell by the United States government, but now she officially is also saying that she's going to drop it. So after the judge has already said this is no longer a case, she's come out to the press to say, "Oh, I'm not going to pursue that anymore," which is very fortunate because she can't, because the judge has already thrown out the case. Anything on those two before we move on, Hannah or Tom? Fair enough. Let's move on. We've got. Go ahead, Hannah.
Oh, I was just going to say, go rewatch our previous episodes if you want my thoughts on those.
Okay, fair enough. Perfect. Here's one that I don't know that we've talked about in a little bit anyway. Our next issue is Rudy Giuliani. You may have heard that Mr. Giuliani has been, or former Mayor Giuliani, was hospitalized down in Florida. He's said to be in critical condition but stable. I'm not quite certain how those two work together, other than he's in really bad shape and he's not going to be in bad shape. I think that's the best, the clearest way to understand those two categories. And what is it? My understanding is it's not been revealed the reason for his.
Oh, it's pneumonia.
It is.
That's what I've read.
Gotcha. I had not heard that. So apparently there is word that it's pneumonia and not cooties. We can definitely say tonight that it is not cooties.
I don't know if we can say it's not. We just know it is also pneumonia.
It
Right.
could also
Pneumonia at a minimum. No, and I'd like to point out that it was not my prayers that put him in the hospital because he didn't fall and hit his head on something sharp.
Okay, we will not say opinions, but I just saw an update that one of his advisors said 36 minutes ago that he's out of the ICU, but he is still going to be in the hospital for a while. And apparently, some of his work near the World Trade Center on 9/11 kind of gave him some respiratory narrowed airways or something. So these kinds of diseases hit him harder. Also, he's in his 80s. So.
Also a combination of garlic and sunlight. So
yeah.
He's going to have to really work that off.
It's really, it's everything. Running water, there's a ton of that inside a hospital.
I was making a vampire joke, but you go ahead.
Oh, no, there's running water is something vampires are allergic to, I think, in the...
Oh, okay, there you go. I'll try to catch up. Good. Running water, I don't know that one.
I just think it's not in a lot of modern stuff because it's not very cool.
Yeah, probably not cinematic.
Yeah.
The fact that they've tried to bring it back to 9/11 is laughable, I think, in that, of course his big thing is 9/11. Of course they're going to find a way to try to tie it back into that. These things hit him harder because of it. Well, it's probably hitting him harder because, as you mentioned, he's an old guy. And
he's a ghoul. He is a detriment to this country. I hope he never takes another comfortable breath in his short life.
There you go. And there's a lot of young girls who have also been harmed by him without
he's on the list.
Any remorse
he's on
or without
the Trump teen list.
Yeah, he's certainly that sort of alleged to be that sort of Trump Epstein list type guy, and the video proves it as well. But anyway, we did want to mention that issue, and let's move on to our next issue, which is Visit from Mars. And that is, of course, you'll recall Mars, the god of war. And he has been visiting us lately in the United States. There is you mentioned that our forward bases are in Germany and they're also in Italy, meaning that the troops are there and ready to be put to their use when necessary. or at least it used to be when necessary. Now it's also when there's a chance to promote some, uh, allegedly, to promote some sort of other agenda that they can be used as toy soldiers. But apparently, there is the possibility that they will be deployed from those front bases in Germany and Italy. So that's been a story this past week. Also, that the Iraqis you may recall Saddam Hussein, who led a political group called the Ba'athist Party. It was banned after his removal from office and death. Uh, but apparently, in the past week, all of a sudden, the membership in the Ba'athist Party has reemerged, and several people have been arrested for being or saying that they are part of the Ba'athist Party in Iraq. This is How is this tied into things happening in Iran and stirring the pot? Those two, Iraq and Iran, have been at each other for thousands of years. I mean, it's almost like Iran and Saudi Arabia and Egypt. Those three places, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, have been sort of centers of power that have always worked, have not been in alignment. They've always sort of countered each other and provided a balance of power in that region. And here's Iraq. Apparently, something's going on that would allow the Ba'athist Party to reemerge. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and see what comes of it, see if it develops any further. And while we're talking about Mars, of course, we got to get Ukraine in. And here we've got a weird thing where Putin is saying there might be a chance for a ceasefire. Since he doesn't believe in ceasefires, we've certainly seen him break enough of them. And since things are not going so well for him, perhaps there is a chance for at least a temporary ceasefire so he can put some more Koreans or some more Africans onto the front lines supporting his troops, which has been part of his latest efforts. Hannah, Tom, what do you think? What do you think about Mars?
Well, I mean, Putin originally requested this ceasefire, I think, starting on Friday. And then Zelensky countered by having it start today, but apparently there's already been some aggression today, so that hasn't worked. As for the troops from Germany, we already talked about that, and the Ba'athist Party is rising again, is certainly not great.
So, as I understand it, the Putin didn't want Ukraine to carpet bomb his May Day parade, which is a huge holiday in Russia, and he wants to have a big, impressive military parade. And it would be terrible if drones came in and just blew people apart right in the middle of that. That would be very embarrassing for the country. So Putin laid down this offer / ultimatum: we're going to have a ceasefire, and if we don't have a ceasefire, I'm going to bomb downtown Kyiv into smithereens. And so, again, as I understand it, Vladimir Zelensky had a counter proposal, and he says, well, if you want a ceasefire, we'll start it today. And if you want Ukraine to abide by it, we'll go from your energy, but today. Not on your chosen weekend, not when you say so, but when I say so. And that starts now. So if you don't want me to rain on your parade, you better act right and not don't start nothing, won't be nothing. And it doesn't sound like that's going too well, but I do admire the pluck.
Excellent.
That puts it in Putin's hands. It's really an ultimatum back to him, sort of a judo power move. So I think it's impressive.
We'll have to keep an eye on that. As Hannah said, things have already happened during this period of attempted ceasefire. Indeed. So we'll see how Zelensky responds and see what happens next there. It was disingenuous when it was offered, so it surely is exactly what he wanted, because he was disingenuous about the offer in the first place. Putin was disingenuous about the offer in the first place. So uh, we'll find out next week. I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk. Oh, actually, we'll have to do that in sort of a wrap up next week, because next week's going to be that episode on our lead issue from tonight. Speaking of things that we do to help wrap up around here, it is that time for the Epstein Count Up. And as you may be familiar when you view this show, that at the end we always mention the days since the unredacted Epstein list has not been released. And we are currently at day 3,977, and we'll be continuing to count up because the unredacted version is not going to be released anytime soon. And so tune in to keep track of how long that actually is. Thank you for joining us for PolitiPod Live for Political Talk. You're welcome to join us every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here for PolitiPod Live. If you want a political laugh, you can join us and a half dozen of our friends for our monthly political comedy podcast, PolitiPod. You'll find that at soundcloud.com/PolitiPod.
This is Tom Bickle.
I was muted, but my name is Hannah Soldner.
Your name is still Hannah Solner.
It's still, I gotta say it extra times.
And I'm Matt Nisanoff saying goodbye.